And welcome. My name is David Smith, and this is my first attempt at a video YouTube presentation for my class MT6255, assignment 5.1, analyzing the efforts of organizations' approach to control or motivate their employees in order to create optimal performance. We were asked to choose from multiple methodologies, potentially TQM or total quality management, balanced scorecard approach, and in my presentation, we are going to look at open book management. So, in looking at open book management, we're going to organize the presentation in this methodology. First, we'll define it. What exactly is open book management? What are the benefits that have been shown in the references and the materials that I looked up and that I can actually use from personal experience? If there's downsides, what are they? What are the steps to deploy such a methodology? My own personal experience in this particular methodology of creating and motivating and controlling organizations and summarizing it. And this varies from our previous experience where we've been looking at different methodologies and qualities of leadership and management, structural methodologies for organizations, whether it's divisional or hierarchical or flat. We're going to look at kind of what really an organization uses to motivate them. Is it just flat out command and control, or is there other ways to get employees to perform at optimal levels? So what is open book management? Open book management is a very transparent form of management. It involves total transparency with the employees. This includes, but is not limited to, financial data, performance data and information, really opening up the books to the employees so they can see financially how the organization is performing, how that performance is fitting to business plan. Are we meeting or exceeding goals? What are those goals? How does their department affect those goals? So it's more than just the transparency of the books, but it's also the cause and effect relationship with how those numbers are produced and how their role is in determining the success or the failure to achieve those goals. And that's where that final bullet comes in. Open book management involves training employees to understand the data and embrace more of a leadership role, and that each individual in the organization contributes to the success as a whole. Now, what are some of the benefits that have been seen? Well, employees feel empowered. They participate more in the business planning and correlation of departmental and individual performance to success measures. In other words, they get to, as opposed to just being given a task, perform task, and be told that task is either completed satisfactorily or not, they can actually see the results of their tasks and work efforts into achieving beneficial outcomes that affects the bottom line performance of the organization. This, in fact, helps build up trust and loyalty within the employees. Employees feel like they have a stake in the game, and often, and this is an important key, get a cut of the organizational success, usually by some sort of predetermined bonus rate, or it could be a commission or something of that nature, contribution that this employee gets once the organization hits certain goals. But what's important is they're actually seeing how those goals are achieved versus just getting some sort of outcome that's told to them that's what the outcome was. They actually get the transparent knowledge of how that outcome came to be and their role in it. And that's where you get the loyalty, because they feel like they're a part of the game. Employees will participate more in the decision-making process with long-range effects in mind versus, well, if I'm not here today, or how am I, how is my departmental even performance on a daily basis affecting the long-range outcomes, and employees will have more participation in their own daily activities to achieve those outcomes, and tends to lead to greater growth and profitability for the organization as a whole. Are there downsides? Well, it just depends on how you look on downsides. In this particular case, probably the biggest downside is that it involves a lot more training of your employees because they need to know when they're looking at data, what does that data mean? What is the difference between a depreciated asset versus an actual cost? And how do they relate to those measures? Because a lot of employees, depending on their level of education, maybe have not been exposed to that level of accounting or financial spreadsheet information. And so you don't want people to run away if they don't or get overly amped up on numbers that they can't clearly define. So this is financial statements and balance sheets, cause and effect of numbers, macro and micro business operations. So you want to be able to give them, when they're seeing the data, how does it relate to the organization as a whole? Transparency, of course, then means potential confidential proprietary information or more information is out there into the employee's hands. So there's probably additional agreements that need to take place, competitive contracts and such. And then, of course, there is a cost to a bonus or employee share in the profits. However, again, if you're looking at the organizational performance as a whole and you're able to achieve better outcomes through this cost, then of course that is not necessarily a downside, but an investment in the long-range benefits. How to deploy it? Well, first and foremost, you need to get the information out there. And why this is step one versus step two is because if you start training on people, but you don't give them any sense of why they're getting the training, then the training becomes less meaningful. So first step is to get the information out there. And you can do this globally or departmentally, or maybe a little bit of both, but you need to make sure that the understanding is out, that the information is out, and then the employees themselves will want to know more of what those numbers mean, why step two then becomes more important because they'll have more motivation to pay attention during the training. So then of course, you need to teach the basics of the business. What do the numbers mean? What are they different, allocated in different groups? What's a cost of sales? What is that even, how's that defined? What materials are going into cost of sales? If that's the number that you're looking at, does their department affect cost of sales? Or if they're an asset purchasing department, do they see a change in depreciation? What's the depreciation schedule that the organization uses so they can put a cost to that number? So on and so forth. Assets in terms of security deposits versus allocating it as a cost. So, and then of course, if you can, give them a more micro level of cause and effect, specifically when you're doing departmental training, how does their organization or department or work group affect the overall numbers? Step three, empower employees to make decisions based on what they know. Again, I see this as a benefit. Of course, this is also depends on the training that you provide. It is going to generally tend to be less of a hierarchical structure at that point, because if you're giving the employees more empowerment to make decisions and not have to follow a very specific scope of decision making that follows a very vertical tree, you are going to have a flat, more decentralized leadership, but in the end, an empowered employee is more loyal and will often make decisions if they see a net benefit to them in the end that benefit the organization as a whole. And then that leads to step number four, make sure everyone shares directly in the company's success. And it can be varying levels based on varying degrees of effect they have, but this is a key benefit. It's part of the rage of the dot-com era. Remember, everyone getting stock benefits as a part of their hiring package, but that only means something if those stocks then become valuable at the end. But there's even a way for non-stock or privately owned organizations to create contributions to 401k. There can be profit sharing. There can be a combination of both. At that point, it's really up to the organization. But number four cannot be overlooked, because just because you make this, they only become more bitter if you make all the financials transparent and they see their successes, but then they can't relate to success in some sort of recompense. My personal experience in this, in the current organization that I work with, the Aviation Institute of Maintenance, we are creating our own budgets for the school. Obviously, it's a partnership with corporate. We get a lot of autonomy, though, in terms of how we control that budget. A lot of the line items are controlled specifically by the campus director. And then the numbers are given to us on a monthly basis, and we can compare them to our original benchmarks that we established on our budget in the beginning of the year. And of course, at the end of the year, we can relate that to some sort of net effect on how we are rewarded in terms of our organizational success. So performance incentives are obviously based on the performance that we meet in terms of hitting these specific goals. We also then, as campus directors, work directly with our employees to ensure they have the items in front of them so that they can see their net success in terms of achieving these benchmarks. And that creates a lot more performance and motivation and individual leadership in order to see those goals being met. So I would say huge thumbs up. Which is my final thoughts. I believe open book management is an excellent way to run business. It provides employees with a specific tie to company performance, gives them a stake in organization, which will lead to self-management and self-discipline, and more group and peer management. I like to say at the end, all for one and one for all. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make this presentation. Hopefully it comes across as it's supposed to, technologically speaking. I'm enjoying this class, and so thank you very much.